Welcome back. You're watching Sunday Edition. Among the top conversations that Kenyans have been having this week with regard to the bill drafted by Tiati Member of Parliament William Kamket, who now wants the position of Deputy President to be scrapped, and then a position for Prime Minister and 2 Deputy Prime Ministers to be added in the Constitution, as well as a presidential term of 7 years for 1 term, and many other things that are included in that particular bill. This has seen a lot of members of Parliament react, a lot of Kenyans react, and I will be having my panelists talking about that in a short while. But let's listen to William Kamket and why he came up with this particular bill, followed by reactions from members of Parliament on this particular bill that threatens to send Kenyans back to a referendum if it goes through all the legal procedures put forth for it.
The cost implications shall be minimal as viewed against the benefits of national cohesion. The new positions created under the proposal ensure a deviation from the current winner-takes-all approach that seems to have led to a portion of citizens being disaffected with the legitimate government of the day, including murmurings about secession. A price, therefore, Honorable Chair, cannot be put on the continued existence of Kenya as a country and harmonious coexistence of its citizens. The proposals I have brought before this committee should not therefore, and I beg the indulgence of this committee, the proposals should not therefore be evaluated solely on the basis of financial cost.
And if you look at the structure, of course, someone is saying that, you know, the majority, the leader of the majority is going to be the Prime Minister. You ask yourself the questions, who is going to be the leader of majority? That is a question that comes into my mind, number one. Number two, and what is the interest in these 2 positions, scrapping the Deputy President, for what reason? And you want to arrogate so much power to the Prime Minister and leave a ceremonial president. For me, to talk about it is to hype it and give it an unnecessary relevance. I will just say it will naturally, in the fullness of time, die. And Kamket will take back his bill to whoever sent the bill to him.
That if we are going to seriously amend the Constitution, we must amend the Constitution to such an extent that we help the country, not deal with power problems, that we deal with something more comprehensive, so that then Kenyans don't misunderstand us, because they will misunderstand us. Because if you amend the Constitution to have a powerful Prime Minister and a ceremonial president, we must change the power, governance structure all the way.
I think the bill is good. It's a good idea, which we just need to firm it up. But from where I sit, I think any day Kenya deserves a parliamentary system of government. This system where the presidency, the power of the presidency is in one office, is not working for us. And as you can see, when we go for elections, political parties are unable to balance the regional interests and even to give positions to regions as is.
It's a good bill in itself, but we need to do some amendments because to me, I think the office of the Deputy President is very, very important, while also acknowledging a need to have a Prime Minister, so that, and also an office of official leader of opposition. Once we have those kind of positions being created, then we will have the country will be much more stable.
All right, members of Parliament there reacting to that bill drafted by Tiati Member of Parliament William Kamket, and of course some of the provisions in that particular bill. I now want to throw it to my panelists, hear what they have to say about that bill and some of its components. I'll start with you, Dismas.
Well, it's very disappointing that a number of members of the National Assembly are dismissing that bill wholesale. Yet they've not taken the effort to give alternative views. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got so many members of the National Assembly, plus the Senate and the MCAs, up to around 7,500. But these members don't come up with anything revolutionary. Mm-hmm. So Kamket has come up with a legislative proposal And instead of them giving him a pat him on the back, they're saying this is rubbish, this is a waste of time, which is really unacceptable. Because for the longest time, we've not had any member of the National Assembly or Senate coming up with issues. If you go through the last parliament, there's nobody from NASA or CORD who came up with a very solid piece of legislation. Even right now, you look at Jubilee, you look at NASA, you even wonder what majority of these members of the National Assembly are doing there and at the Senate. So when this first-time guy who's really suffered in Baringo when he was a speaker, he comes up with an idea, we need to embrace it. But now when you look at the idea really is telling Kenyans, let's look at whether or not we want to run with a parliamentary system of democracy or we want to run with a presidential system. You go through his proposal, it's very weak, and it seems like it was done in a hurry. But in my view, if people sit down and give it content, then we'll make progress. And when you look at successful democracies all over the world, they tend to be parliamentary systems. You can go to India, you can go to Israel, you can go to Britain, New Zealand, Australia. There are so many examples, and that's what we need to evaluate. And I think among all the legislators who've spoken, the only one who seems to make sense is Mutula Kilonzo, who says, let's look as to whether or not we are going for a parliamentary system, but come up with other reforms. And these reforms have been articulated by Musalia Mudavadi, who says, if you want really to come up with significant reforms, let's look at these 20%, which during when we were passing the constitution we said was horrible, that we must sanitize IBC because we have a challenge of counting votes. We must really empower people to count votes and then work on inclusivity. And also Kamtet is the mischief he wants to cure is a bit funny because in his reasoning he says, right now you have a dining table and it's only 2 people who are invited to eat. Let's increase this dining table so that we have another 10 people. So essentially what he's thinking of is only the politicians. In his proposals, he doesn't talk about Wanjiku or Kenya anymore. He's just focusing on the elites. And this is the tragedy we have in Kenya, that we are coming up with the amendments not for the benefit of posterity, but for these few greedy politicians.
But he says he wants to cover the winner takes it all context in our elections because for that reason of winner takes it all, we've made elections, especially presidential elections in this country, a life or death affair. So his argument is if we break it down and have everyone win at the end of the day, then maybe we will move on from elections and focus on other things. What do you think?
Yes, that will make progress. But you see, unfortunately, those MPs do not understand the difference between a parliamentary system of democracy and a presidential system. Maybe Muturi and Ken Lusaka again need to organize for them another forum, for them really to go and understand. Because some of those comments, when they're saying, why do you need a powerful prime minister and a weak president? That's the essence of a parliamentary system. A parliamentary system is run by a prime minister. A number of them were asking who is going to be the leader of majority in the National Assembly. Clearly, they do not understand how it works. Because the leader in the National Assembly is the prime minister, is the one who goes there on a day-to-day basis to take those questions. Maybe a number of these guys should start watching British TV, watch Sky News, and understand how a parliamentary system works at Westminster.
All right.
And I think this system will accommodate everybody. Because if we're in a parliamentary system, and assuming that NASA did not boycott those elections, then right now you would have Uhuru Kenyatta coming to the National Assembly on a daily basis, facing off with Raila Odinga, Kalonzo, Wetangula, and company. And all of them would have offices, they would have GK vehicles, because a number of these guys, they fear that they'll not have access to a GK vehicle makes them nervous. I mean, you recall Kalonzo Musyoka the other day, during the swearing in, when his security was withdrawn, the fella became nervous. He was unable to move from point A to point B because he didn't have a car, because he didn't have security. But if he was in the National Assembly, maybe those parks would be maintained.
All right.
And in my view, anytime when you look at Kenya, the way fragmented, parliamentary democracy is what is going to work, provided we structure it so that we have an upper limit. That again, you don't have a prime minister who can, rule Kenya for 50 years.
Yeah.
We have it structured around the South African model that in as much as it's a parliamentary system of democracy, you can't run for more than 2 terms.
Okay, Mark, this seems to be for it, but of course, if it will be firmed up as a bill, what do you think? What are your thoughts about this bill?
You're asking me to trust politicians in parliament whose first action whenever they get into parliament is to add their own salaries. That's who we want to trust to choose our president, not a smart move. However, the reality is there is a problem, and I'll tell you why there's a problem. In an election such as the one that has passed, where you have an opposition candidate who had millions of votes, 4.5, 6 million, whatever number.
Depending on
votes.
who you ask.
Yes, who support this guy. Okay, now this guy has no office. Okay, he has no stature within the politics of the country. Now, as at now, it is not a big problem because Raila, Kalonzo, all of them have retirement benefits for life that allow them to have security and things like that. Now, I want you to imagine a situation where someone is not an ex-anything, runs for president and comes second, and has the popularity of 49% of the country. And this person has no dignified office. And let me tell you, I have seen what happens when you run for office and you fail. It's true. The security guards will leave you on the highway. They will dump you because you're no longer viable as a candidate. And therefore, it does not make sense for us as a country to simply get rid of leaders simply because they could not meet that 50+1 mark. What I agitate for is for the dignification of the opposition. What do I mean? That this person who is the leader of opposition de facto is recognized within the parliamentary and Senate structures and is given the position of leader of opposition in the House or in the Senate. This does not require a lot of tinkering to go to the extent of constitutional review. Actually, what you can do is just change the party listing system and saying if the party wins a minority, then the leader of the party becomes number one on that list, which I think is
so then
fair.
this bill is a step towards the right direction?
I'm not sure it's a step towards the right direction because it's a pretty dumb bill. It's not well thought out because it has issues as well, because why then do we need a ceremonial president? Which ceremony? What wedding are we attending as a country?
This must will tell you you're among those who don't understand
No,
the
I
system.
understand it fully. I understand it fully.
But you know, at least you've got an MP who's gone the extra mile. Instead of doing rallies and inciting folks in the villages, is coming up with an idea. So what we need to do is to interrogate this idea. Does a parliamentary system make sense?
Okay.
Yes.
Let's let him
and that's
finish.
what I'm doing. But the second part is I honestly think that one of the most stable governments we ever had, and this will be controversial to a lot of people, was the Nusumkate government. It was balanced because, one, the government was reporting itself by itself. Oh, this one has stolen, this one has not stolen. It was balanced because for the first time, people in Nyanza were saying Serikali, people in Coast were saying Serikali, people in Central were saying Serikali. Everyone was part of this thing. And therefore, my thinking is, again, without necessarily changing the constitution, create a position such as a chief minister who's in charge of government coordination and liaising with Parliament and Senate to update them on what the government is doing. All these things are possible without a constitutional review.
Okay. Husband, I would really like to hear what you have to think about this particular bill. And if you're able to also comment on, there's a component in the bill that also says that MCAs should be the ones to elect senators and not Kenyans. So please indulge us on that as well.
Yeah, one, I think I appreciate Honorable Kamket because I think he has come out as the only member of parliament who has seen the challenges that we're facing as a country as far as politics is concerned, as far as our democracy is concerned, and done something, not in the public gathering rallies outside there.
All right, I want you to hold on for just a second. I want to throw it to Mutinda, and then I will have you give us your views in a short while. Yes, Mutinda.
The best thing about this bill is the introduction of the debate about whether to go presidential or to go parliamentary.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that the MP has explained some of the concerns. You know, every country has its own uniqueness, and there are unique challenges that every country is dealing with. One of our unique challenges is the issue of cohesion as a nation, and that's why he even spoke of some threats about secession and stuff. So in that context, then you ask yourself, now that we're still grappling with nationhood, we are yet to identify ourselves as one nation. And whenever there's a political fallout, there are people who are actually even threatening to get out. Which would be the best political system? This is not a new debate. You remember prior to the 2010 constitution, it was actually the key debate. Things changed in Naivasha when everybody decided we go presidential. But prior to that, there was a very big chunk of the political elite that was rallying for parliamentary. Personally, I think it is something that should be encouraged because, you know, the presidency as we know it, as instead of being a unifying factor, has become a polarizing factor. And that is one of the things we need to deal with. Again, in terms of accountability, in terms of demystifying power, if there's one system that really helps in doing that, it is the parliamentary system. You saw what happened in South Africa, because South Africa is actually a parliamentary system. But headed by a president, just like German is headed by a chancellor, but it is in effect a parliamentary system. You've seen the kind of accountability mechanisms that the immediate former president of South Africa has been taken through. He's even been attending parliamentary sessions. He's been answering questions. You know, that kind of interaction demystifies the whole thing about the power of the presidency. So it's about us to ask ourselves whether that is bad or good.
And while on that note, should we allow MCAs elect our senators for us?
I think even before we go there, because once we sort out what parliamentary system is at the national level, then it will be easy to cascade it down to the counties. So first would be to understand what exactly is this parliamentary system. And like Dismas is probably saying, there is a lot that needs to be done to the bill. Because, for instance, I don't understand why Kenyans should go to elect a president and make him ceremonial. So if we are to adapt a parliamentary system, then have a president who is ceremonial, then we need to change the way we also elect that president. Because it doesn't make sense to go through the rigors of universal suffrage for voting for one person who's in effect going to be ceremonial. So there are things that needs to be done. But from where I sit, I am happy about the bill. I am happy about the revisiting and the reintroduction of the debate about whether to go parliamentary or go presidential. And I think one of the things that I would support about going parliamentary is about the issue of cohesion and the issue of accountability, more accountability to the person who's running government, because they normally have to go to parliament and they have to respond, unlike the situation
that we have now. Yes, back to you, Hesbon.
Well, I think the point I was trying to make is that it's a good thing that there is a member of parliament who has taken this, you know, to parliament, and it's trying to address it within the law. Look at the problems that we are facing as far as our election, our politics, and our democracy is concerned, and address it within the frameworks of the law, which it's a good thing. And what MPs ought to be doing, instead of criticizing or dismissing it, they should look at it and put it in perspective and find out, does it address the key things that are affecting us? And if we are going to implement it, how then do we implement it to ensure that it covers almost everything? A few things that come out clearly that call for concern. The issue of the winner takes it all. I mean, it's a critical issue. It is why our elections are hotly contested and they lead to a lot of violence and deaths, because it's a question of, if I don't win, I'm in the bush. The other thing that you may want to look at is the question of term limits, that you find that we always have issues when we don't have an incumbent. You know, when we have a fresh set of candidates, you know, trying to get into power. And we also have incidences where the incumbent who is in power finds it difficult, you know, to cede, you know, the privileges that come with power. So having a one-term limit probably would address that. I think the debate about going presidential or parliamentary, for me, it's neither here nor there. I mean, the American democracy is purely presidential. It is working for Americans. The British system is parliamentary. It is working for them. The question is, we are not Britons, we are not Americans. We should start looking at politics that will address the challenges of Kenyans, because Kenyans don't look like South Africans, Kenyans don't behave like Britons, Kenyans don't behave like Americans. So you have a situation where you're going to have a ceremonial president and a very powerful prime minister. Ask yourself, can our society, our cultural predisposition function well, help this system function well in Kenya. We saw during the Nusumkati government, where the government was speaking from both mouths, you know. And I don't think it was one of the best situations to find ourselves in, but we had to do that. So it is a question of MPs subjecting this to the realities of our country today and divorcing the debate from the issue of presidential because it is working elsewhere or parliamentary because it is working elsewhere, and just looking at who are Kenyans, what are the unique peculiarities of Kenyan voters, what are the key things that inform our politics that is purely driven by our ethnicities, and then how do we address that? It may not be a question of parliamentary or presidential.
But even with that, even as we try to interrogate what works in this particular bill and what doesn't, there are the backroom political conversations with regard to this bill. One of them is the 2022 elections. The second one is if we happen to go to a referendum between now and 2022, what will that mean for the country, and whose powers does this bill try to clip ahead of 2022? I mean, these are conversations Kenyans are having out there. Dismas, what do you think?
Well, people are said to be close to the deputy president are claiming this mischief coming to clip his powers. And yesterday, from the way he spoke in Western Kenya, he has said that he has no interest in this bill.
Yes.
So I don't think this bill is going anywhere. And also Duale made that clarification when he reminded people that Kamket, in fact, is Kanu MP. At that stage now, is no longer proud to be associated with Kanu. And so I doubt whether the bill will go anywhere. And that's the tragedy we are having today. That wherever we are coming up with a piece of legislation, it's not about addressing the Teacher Service Commission transferring teachers from Mandera. We're just looking at the political elite and serving their selfish interest. Kamket has got a very good bill. That's a very good idea. But because the insiders around Ruto suspect that this bill is aimed at him, then all of a sudden they're going to scatter a very good idea. I mean, it's the same thing they say. If Raila Odinga says the sky is blue, if you're from Jubilee, you'll say, no, it can never be blue, it's green. And I think it's important for us to start appreciating ideas without even questioning the origin. Kamtet is an MP, is paid by our taxes, he's come up with an idea. Please look at it as a piece of legislation, proposed legislation. And again, we should run away from creating this so that we benefit two persons. If you go to Russia, they've got a strongman called Vladimir Putin and his Prime Minister, Medvedev. And they keep on fluctuating. It's like a pendulum. One day Putin is the president, the next day he becomes the Prime Minister. So there's a risk that if you take this bill and it becomes law, you would have two people doing a pendulum on us. So one day President Kenyatta is the president, the next day becomes the Prime Minister, and it keeps on moving till the cows come home. So we must be alert to that. As a nation, we should come up with legislation which benefits our selfish interest. We shouldn't be coming up with legislation looking at Ruto. And you recall when we started reviewing the Constitution, Mishuk made some interesting statements. He said the entire reason why we wanted to change the Constitution is to get Daniel Arap Moi out of office. Now that he's out of office, we are no longer under any pressure to do this. We should stop being a selfish nation and look what serves our national interest, what serves our public interest. If a parliamentary democracy is going to make us stable, address our issue, so that we make progress, we become like Singapore, our age mates, then let's embrace it, but make sure that we don't allow impunity, mediocrity, and corruption to creep in.
Yes, Mark.
You know, the reality of the matter, we do not need a constitutional review. It is too expensive and it is pointless. And I'll tell you why it is pointless. The moment we move into a parliamentary system, we will start arguing about who got into parliament and how selfish they are. Which is, listen, we voted for these guys in August. It is February. How many newspaper articles have come out complaining about parliamentarians? So the issue is not the positions. The issue is the holders of those positions. And what we need to address as a nation is our bad manners. If you put a monkey in a suit and take it to a dinner, it will eat the way it ate in the forest. Do not think by changing how the monkey is dressed, you're going to change how it's behaved. And the problem with our politics and our people and who we are as a nation is we are a bunch of monkeys when it comes to politics. And these monkeys, no matter what suit we wear, we will act the same. So let's be very serious about our nation. If we want to address issues of cohesion, let's find ways within the current framework to work together. That's what needs to happen. Let's find ways within our political party infrastructure to be inclusive. How many parties only have MPs from one tribe? You know, we're acting like we don't see these things. How many in fact, there are very few parties.
Okay.
In fact, there are only 2 that can claim MPs outside of their tribe. And that is where the problem is. So if we are monkeys, let's not pretend a suit will make us gentlemen.
This must quickly, I want us to take a short break.
Yeah, let me buttress that point. We need legislation that serves our national interest and public interest. Let's use the example of Mr. Zuma in South Africa. And I'm going to use the way Mark has described. Assuming that Zuma is a monkey and is behaving in a manner that is unacceptable, then you have the ANC constitution and the South African constitution to tame him. It's because they've got a very solid constitutional framework that a party can actually summon a sitting president and tell him, Mr. Zuma, you are going home. In Kenya, nobody would have the guts to I mean, do you think a Jubilee parliamentary group invited to State House can look at President Kenyatta in the eye and they say, Mr. President, you've been making some decisions unacceptable, go home? No. So we cannot leave ourselves to the mercy of people saying, okay, good manners, bad manners, good manners, and hope they're going to be well behaved. We must have an institutional framework that will punish people for bad manners. And South African has demonstrated that. Now, when you go to Britain, it was not about bad manners. When David Cameron made decisions which were considered not to be consistent with the general population, he took a walk, he went home because of the constitutional framework.
Okay. I need us to take a short break. Husband, quickly, in less than a minute.
Yes, I think the biggest issue here is when you're looking at the South African, for instance, and drawing examples, it is not so much about their parliamentary system as it is about their political party. That Zuma's downfall did not originate in parliament. It started from ANC. And I think I made it clear last week that sometimes you run away from the biggest problem. If we can sanitize our political parties and make them stronger, they can even summon a president.
Institutions.
Yes.
All right, I want us to take a quick break here on Sunday edition. We have been discussing the William Kamkat bill, Member of Parliament, Tiati. When we get back, we'll take a look at the election petitions drama, those who've lost, those who've retained their seats, and what really this means for them and their constituents. So don't go too far. This is Sunday edition.